What would you do if your husband showed up at your work, handed you a thick envelope, and said it was over, all because you refused to give up your best friend? Can refusing to choose really cost you everything, even when you believe you're right? The day I got served those papers, I still thought he was the selfish one. The suburban townhouse that Elias and I called home had become a battlefield, though I refused to see it that way at the time. As a case manager at the downtown health clinic, I dealt with people's problems all day long. The last thing I wanted was to come home to more drama from my husband. "Celestina, we need to talk," Elias said one Thursday evening as I walked through the front door at nearly 9 o'clock. His accounting files were spread across our dining room table, but his attention was entirely focused on me. "Can it wait? I've had a long day," I replied, kicking off my heels and heading straight for the kitchen. The truth was, I'd spent the last 3 hours at the downtown bistro with Mars, my best friend since college. We'd been catching up over wine and appetizers, talking about everything and nothing. It felt like freedom. "That's what you always say," Elias muttered, following me into the kitchen. "You've been having a lot of long days lately." I turned to face him, already feeling defensive. "What's that supposed to mean? I work hard, Elias. Some of us can't just sit behind a desk all day crunching numbers." His jaw tightened. "I'm not talking about your work, and you know it. I'm talking about Mars. You're with him constantly. Late dinners, weekend coffee dates, texting until midnight. When did your friendship become more important than our marriage?" "Mars is my best friend," I snapped back. "He's been in my life longer than you have. If you can't handle that, maybe the problem is your jealousy, not my friendship." Elias ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing but now saw as weakness. "It's not jealousy, Celestina. It's respect. The way you two act together. The way people look at us when we're out. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing," I laughed bitterly. "You're embarrassed by me having a friend? That's rich, coming from someone who barely has any friends at all." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." But I was already walking away, pulling out my phone to text Mars about Elias's latest bout of insecurity. My mother had warned me about this when we got married 7 years ago. She'd said Elias seemed like the controlling type, the kind of man who would try to isolate me from my friends and family once he felt secure. Later that night, as Elias was getting ready for bed, I caught him looking at my phone. I'd left it on the nightstand, and the screen had lit up with a notification from Mars. "Are you seriously going through my phone?" I demanded, snatching it away from him. I wasn't going through it. It buzzed, and I glanced over. The message preview was right there. "What did it say?" I challenged, even though I knew exactly what Mars had texted. "Your husband sounds like a real piece of work. You deserve better." "It doesn't matter what it said," Elias replied quietly. "What matters is that you're discussing our private conversations with him." "He's my friend, Elias. Friends talk to each other. If you don't like what I'm saying about you, maybe you should change your behavior instead of trying to control mine." I saw something shift in his expression then, a hardness I'd never seen before. "Fine, but don't expect me to pretend everything is normal when you're clearly prioritizing him over our family." "Our family?" I scoffed. "You mean you? Because last I checked, our daughter Lila loves Mars. He brings her presents, plays games with her, makes her laugh, unlike some people who just lecture everyone all the time." That hit home. I could see it in the way Elias's shoulders sagged slightly. Good. Maybe now he'd understand that the problem wasn't Mars or me. It was his own insecurity and controlling nature. I changed my phone passcode that night just to make a point. If Elias wanted to act paranoid, I'd give him something to be paranoid about. The downtown bistro had become our regular spot. Mars and I met there every Tuesday and Friday, and sometimes on weekends when I could get away. It was a cozy place with dim lighting and private booths, perfect for the kind of deep conversations that Elias never seemed interested in having. "You look stressed," Mars said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. His fingers were warm, and I felt that familiar flutter in my stomach that I'd been trying to ignore for months. Elias is being impossible, I confided, taking a sip of my third glass of wine. He's constantly questioning where I am, what I'm doing, who I'm with. It's suffocating. Mars squeezed my hand gently. You know you don't have to put up with that, right? You're an independent woman with your own career, your own life. He doesn't own you. I know, I said, but even as I said it, I felt guilty. Not because of what Mars was suggesting, but because of how right it felt to be here with him instead of at home with my husband. Celestina, is that you? I looked up to see Janet Morrison, a woman from Lila's school PTA, standing beside our table with a shocked expression on her face. Mars quickly pulled his hand away from mine, but it was too late. Oh, hi, Janet, I said, trying to sound casual. This is my friend Mars. We were just grabbing a quick dinner. Janet's eyes moved between us, taking in the intimate setting, the wine glasses, the way we'd been leaning toward each other. I see. Well, I should let you get back to your dinner. After she left, Mars chuckled. That was awkward. But I felt a chill run down my spine. Janet was one of the biggest gossips at Lila's school, and she was married to Tom Morrison, who worked at the same accounting firm as Elias. When I got home that night, Elias was waiting up for me. How was work? He asked pointedly. Fine. Long day, lots of difficult cases. The lie came easily, but I could see he didn't believe me. Janet Morrison's husband called me tonight, Elias said quietly. He wanted to give me a heads up about something his wife saw. My heart started pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. Oh? What about? You tell me, Celestina. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said, brushing past him toward the stairs. If Janet Morrison has nothing better to do than make up stories about people, that's her problem. So you weren't at Romano's Bistro tonight with Mars? I stopped on the third step and turned back to him. I might have grabbed a quick bite with him after work. So what? Since when is having dinner with a friend a crime? It's not about having dinner with a friend, Elias said, his voice strained. It's about the way it looked. Janet said you two were holding hands, that you looked like a couple. Janet Morrison needs to mind her own business, I snapped, and so do you. I'm not going to be interrogated every time I leave this house. The next day, I posted a photo on social media, Mars and me at the bistro, smiling and laughing. I captioned it, Besties Forever, so grateful for friends who actually listen and support me. Within hours, I had dozens of likes and comments. Most were supportive, but I noticed that several of Elias's coworkers had seen it. Good. Maybe now they'd understand that I wasn't going to be controlled or isolated. That evening, Elias came home looking defeated. 3 different people asked me about your Facebook post today, he said quietly. And they wanted to know if everything was okay with us. I shrugged. What did you tell them? I told them everything was fine, but Celestina, this is getting out of hand. People are talking. Let them talk, I said defiantly. I'm not going to hide my friendships just because some people have dirty minds. But even as I said it, I could see the hurt in Elias's eyes. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The confrontation at my workplace came on a Monday morning. I was reviewing case files when my supervisor, Karen, knocked on my office door. Celestina, can I speak with you for a moment? I looked up, immediately sensing tension in her voice. Of course. What's up? Karen closed the door behind her and sat down across from my desk. I've been hearing some concerns about your personal life affecting your professional reputation. Excuse me? I felt my face flush with anger. What concerns? There have been reports about extended lunch breaks, personal phone calls during work hours, and some gossip about your relationship with a male friend. I need to remind you that as a case manager, you're held to certain standards of professional conduct. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously policing my personal life now? I take my lunch breaks just like everyone else, and I've never let my personal relationships interfere with my work. I'm not trying to police anything. Karen said carefully. I'm just asking you to be mindful of how your actions might be perceived, both by clients and colleagues. After Karen left, I immediately called Mars. They're trying to control me at work now too, I told him, pacing around my office. First Elias, now my boss. I feel like everyone's ganging up on me. That's terrible, Mars said sympathetically. You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of harassment. That evening, I called my mother to vent about the situation. Mum, I don't know what to do. Elias is being completely unreasonable, and now it's affecting my job. What's he doing now? My mother asked, her voice immediately taking on a protective tone. He's trying to isolate me from my friends. He's jealous of Mars and he's making such a big deal about it that people at work are starting to gossip. It's like emotional abuse, Mum. He's trying to control who I can and can't see. That son of a bitch, my mother said angrily. I knew there was something off about him. He always seemed too possessive, too needy. You're a grown woman, Celestina. You have every right to maintain your friendships. I felt validated hearing my mother's support, but when I got home, I found Elias in the living room with his brother Paul and my sister Jenna. The three of them looked up when I walked in, and I immediately sensed I'd walked into some kind of intervention. What's this about? I asked suspiciously. We're worried about you, Jenna said gently, and about Lila. Lila? What does Lila have to do with anything? She's been asking questions, Paul said, about why Mommy and Daddy are fighting all the time, about why you're never home anymore. I'm home plenty, I said defensively, and Elias and I aren't fighting. We're having normal marital discussions. Normal marital discussions don't involve one spouse publicly humiliating the other, Paul continued. What you're doing to my brother isn't okay, Celestina. I felt my temper flare. What I'm doing? I'm maintaining a friendship that I've had for over a decade. If Elias can't handle that, maybe he needs therapy, not me. It's not just a friendship anymore, Jenna said quietly. Everyone can see it, Celestina. The way you look at Mars, the way you talk about him, the way you prioritize him over your own family. You're having an emotional affair, and it's destroying your marriage. That's ridiculous, I snapped. Mars and I are friends, close friends. Just because Elias is insecure doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. Then why won't you set boundaries? Elias asked, speaking for the first time since I'd arrived. If it's really just friendship, why won't you limit the time you spend with him? Why won't you include me sometimes? Why do you get defensive every time I bring it up? Because I shouldn't have to, I shouted. I'm not going to let you control my friendships just because you're jealous and insecure. At that moment, Lila appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, tears streaming down her face. Are you and Daddy getting divorced? She asked in a small voice. My heart broke seeing her like that, but I forced a smile and walked over to the stairs. Of course not, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy are just having a grown-up conversation. Everything's fine. But even as I said it, I could feel the weight of everyone's stares. They all thought I was the problem. They all thought I was the one destroying our family. After Jenna and Paul left, I found Elias in our bedroom, quietly packing some clothes into a duffel bag. What are you doing? I'm going to stay at my dad's for a few days, he said without looking at me. I think we both need some space to figure out what we want. Fine, I said, even though panic was rising in my chest. Maybe that's exactly what we need. Mars's apartment was a sanctuary from all the drama at home. It was modern and minimalist, the complete opposite of the cluttered family home I shared with Elias. When I showed up at his door that Friday evening, he welcomed me with a glass of wine and a sympathetic ear. You look exhausted, he said, leading me to his leather couch. I am exhausted, I admitted, sinking into the cushions. Elias moved out 3 days ago, and everyone's acting like it's my fault. My sister barely speaks to me. His family thinks I'm some kind of monster, and people at work keep giving me weird looks. Mars sat down beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe the universe is telling you it's time to make a change. What do you mean? I mean, maybe you and Elias have just grown apart. It happens. People change. Relationships run their course. There's no shame in admitting when something isn't working anymore. I took a large sip of wine, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. But what about Lila? What about everything we've built together? Lila will be fine, Mars said, his hand finding mine. Kids are resilient, and as for what you've built, sometimes you have to tear down the old to make room for something new. The way he was looking at me made my heart race. We'd been dancing around this for months, but now, with Elias gone and my marriage falling apart, the possibility of something more with Mars felt real and immediate. Mars, I whispered, leaning closer to him. But instead of moving toward me, he pulled back slightly. Celestina, you know I care about you. You're one of my best friends. But you need to figure out what you want before anything happens. I felt a sting of rejection, but I tried not to show it. I know what I want. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want the security of your marriage and the excitement of our friendship, but life doesn't work that way. I'm not trying to have it both ways, I protested. I'm trying to be true to myself and my feelings. Then be true, Mars said, standing up and walking to the window. Make a choice. Either work things out with your husband and accept that our friendship needs boundaries, or leave him and see what else is out there. I stared at him, feeling confused and hurt. Are you saying you don't want to be friends anymore? I'm saying I don't want to be the reason your marriage falls apart, and I don't want to be strung along while you figure out your life. I left Mars's apartment that night feeling more confused than ever. I'd expected support and validation, but instead, I'd gotten an ultimatum. It felt like everyone was trying to control me, to force me into boxes that didn't fit who I was becoming. The next morning, I called my mother. Mum, I think Elias is trying to turn everyone against me. What do you mean, honey? He's been talking to people, spreading his version of what's happening. Even Mars is starting to question our friendship now. I feel like I'm being ganged up on. That bastard, my mother said angrily. He's trying to isolate you, make you feel like you're the problem so you'll come crawling back to him. It's classic emotional manipulation. Hearing my mother's validation made me feel better, but it didn't solve my immediate problem. Elias had been gone for a week, and people were starting to ask questions. At Lila's school pickup, other parents were giving me sympathetic looks and asking if everything was okay. At work, my colleagues were walking on eggshells around me. On Monday morning, Karen called me into her office again. Celestina, I've received some complaints about your personal phone calls during work hours. Several colleagues have mentioned that you seem distracted and that you've been discussing personal matters quite loudly in your office. I've been going through a difficult time, I said defensively. I'm sorry if I've been a little distracted, but I haven't let it affect my work quality. I understand that personal issues can be challenging, but you need to keep them separate from your professional responsibilities. I'm going to need you to be more mindful of your conduct during work hours. After the meeting, I was furious. It felt like everyone was piling on, trying to make me the villain in a situation where I was clearly the victim. I called Mars to vent, but he didn't answer. I tried again an hour later, and then again that evening. Nothing. Finally, he texted me back. I think you need to work things out with your husband. I'm out. I stared at the message in disbelief. After everything we'd shared, after all the support he'd given me, he was just walking away. It felt like the ultimate betrayal. I was still staring at my phone, trying to figure out how to respond to Mars, when there was a knock at my office door. I looked up to see a man in a suit holding a thick envelope. Celestina Vane? Yes? You've been served. The legal documents felt heavy in my hands as I sat in my office, trying to process what I was reading. Petition for legal separation, temporary custody order, financial disclosure requirements. The words blurred together as the reality of the situation hit me. Elias wasn't just taking a break, he was ending our marriage. I called him immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. We need to talk, I said when he answered. I think the papers say everything that needs to be said. His voice was cold, businesslike. Elias, please. This is crazy. We can work this out. Can we? Because for the past 6 months, every time I've tried to talk to you, you've told me I'm controlling and jealous. Every time I've asked you to set boundaries with Mars, you've accused me of trying to isolate you. I'm tired of being made to feel like the villain in my own marriage. You're not the villain, I said, though even as I said it, I realized I'd been treating him like one. I know I haven't been perfect, but serving me with papers at work, that's humiliating. Humiliating? Elias's voice rose slightly. Do you know what's humiliating? Having your coworkers ask if you know your wife is having an affair. Having your daughter ask why mommy doesn't come home for dinner anymore. Having your own family question whether you're man enough to stand up for yourself. I'm not having an affair, I protested, though the words felt hollow even to me. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. Celestina, you've been checked out of this marriage for months. You prioritize Mars over me, over Lila, over our family. You share intimate details of our relationship with him. You seek comfort and validation from him instead of working on our problems together. I wanted to argue, but the fight had gone out of me. Mars had abandoned me, my family was divided, and now Elias was taking legal action. I felt like I was drowning. What about Lila? I asked quietly. What about her? I'm asking for primary custody, but you'll have visitation rights. She needs stability, Celestina. She needs to know that at least one of her parents is committed to putting her first. That stung more than anything else he'd said. I put Lila first. Do you? When's the last time you helped her with homework? When's the last time you put her to bed? When's the last time you chose to spend an evening with her instead of texting Mars or meeting him for drinks? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I want to fix this, I whispered. I don't think you do, Elias said sadly. I think you want to fix the consequences of your choices, but you don't want to change the choices themselves. You've made it clear that Mars is more important to you than our marriage. I'm just accepting that reality and moving forward. After he hung up, I sat in my office crying for the first time in months. Not because I was angry or frustrated, but because I was scared. For the first time since this whole situation started, I was truly alone. I tried calling Mars again, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I drove by his apartment that evening, but his car wasn't there. I even went to the bistro where we used to meet, hoping he might show up, but he didn't. My mother came over that night to help with Lila and to offer moral support. He's trying to intimidate you, she said, looking through the legal papers. This is all just a scare tactic. He thinks if he files these papers, you'll panic and give up Mars. Maybe I should, I said quietly. Absolutely not, my mother said firmly. You have every right to your friendships. If Elias can't handle that, then maybe this marriage isn't worth saving. But even my mother's support felt hollow now. I was starting to see the situation more clearly, and I didn't like what I saw. I'd been so focused on defending my right to be friends with Mars that I'd lost sight of everything else that mattered. The next morning, Jenna called. I heard about the papers, she said. I suppose you're happy about it. No, Celestina, I'm not happy. I'm sad. I'm sad that it came to this, and I'm sad that you still don't seem to understand why. Enlighten me. You had a good man who loved you, a beautiful daughter who needed you, and a stable life. And you threw it all away for a fantasy with someone who doesn't even want you enough to fight for you. That's not what happened, isn't it? Mars walked away the minute things got complicated. He was happy to be your emotional support when it was fun and exciting, but the moment you needed him to actually commit to something real, he disappeared. That should tell you everything you need to know about his character and about what your friendship really was. I wanted to argue with her, but I couldn't. Everything she was saying was true, and I was finally starting to see it. That afternoon, I got a call from Elias's lawyer, requesting a meeting to discuss the custody arrangement and financial settlement. The reality of what was happening was finally sinking in. I was about to lose everything, and for the first time, I wasn't sure it was everyone else's fault. The law office was intimidating, all dark wood paneling and leather-bound books. I sat across from Elias and his lawyer, feeling small and unprepared, despite having my own attorney beside me. "Let's start with the custody arrangement," Elias's lawyer began, opening a thick file. "My client is requesting primary physical custody of the minor child with supervised visitation for Mrs. Vane until she can demonstrate stability." "Supervised visitation?" I interrupted. "That's ridiculous. I'm her mother." "Mrs. Vane," the lawyer continued calmly, "we have documented evidence of your extended absences from the family home, your prioritization of social activities over parental responsibilities, and witness testimony regarding your emotional state and decision-making during the past 6 months." My lawyer leaned forward. "What kind of witness testimony?" Elias's lawyer pulled out a folder. "We have statements from family members, school personnel who've noted Leela's distress and behavioral changes, and documentation of Mrs. Vane's workplace performance issues related to personal conduct." I felt my face burning with shame and anger. "You've been building a case against me this whole time." Elias spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. "I've been documenting the deterioration of our family, yes. Every missed dinner, every time you chose Mars over Lila, every lie you told about where you were and what you were doing. I never lied. You told me you were working late when you were at the bistro with Mars. You told Lila you were at a work conference when you spent the weekend texting him constantly. You told your family I was being controlling and abusive when all I was doing was asking you to prioritize our marriage." The lawyer continued presenting evidence. Phone records showing hundreds of texts between Mars and me. Credit card statements from our restaurant meetings, social media posts that painted our relationship in an inappropriate light, and witness statements from people who'd seen us together. "Furthermore," the lawyer said, "we have evidence that Mrs. Vane has been discussing private marital matters with Mr. Redding, seeking relationship advice from someone outside the marriage rather than working on issues with her husband or a qualified counselor." "That's what friends do," I said weakly. "Friends don't encourage married women to prioritize their feelings over their family obligations," Elias said quietly. "Friends don't tell married women that they deserve better than their husbands. Friends don't create situations where a mother is choosing between her family and her social life." My lawyer tried to argue that I was being unfairly characterized, but the evidence was overwhelming. Text messages where I complained about Elias to Mars. Photos of Mars and me that looked more intimate than friendly. Testimony from Lila's teacher about her increased anxiety and questions about why Mommy was never around anymore. "What do you want from me?" I asked Elias directly, ignoring the lawyers. "I want you to get help," he said. "I want you to figure out why you were willing to destroy our family for someone who walked away the minute things got complicated. I want you to prove that you can put Leela's needs before your own wants. And if I do that, then maybe we can work out a reasonable custody arrangement. But Celestina, I'm not going to expose our daughter to the chaos and instability you've created, not anymore." The meeting continued for another hour, covering financial assets, property division, and support arrangements. Through it all, I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. This couldn't be happening to me. This couldn't be the consequence of simply maintaining a close friendship. But as I listened to the evidence being presented, I started to see the pattern. The gradual prioritization of Mars over my family. The emotional intimacy that had replaced the connection with my husband. The lies and justifications and manipulations I'd used to avoid dealing with the real issues in my marriage. After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at my phone. I had dozens of missed calls from my mother, several texts from coworkers asking if I was okay, and nothing from Mars. I scrolled through my message history with him, reading months of conversations where I'd complained about Elias, sought validation for my choices, and gradually built a case for why I deserved something different. In return, Mars had encouraged my dissatisfaction, agreed that Elias was controlling, and suggested that I deserved better. But when it came time to actually offer me something better, he'd disappeared. I drove to his apartment one last time, determined to get some kind of explanation or closure. His car was in the parking lot, so I knew he was home. I knocked on his door, and after a long moment, he answered. "Celestina, I told you I'm out of this situation. I just need to understand why. After everything we shared, after all the support you gave me, why did you just disappear when I needed you most?" Mars sighed and stepped aside to let me in. "Because I realized what we were doing wasn't fair to anyone, including us. You're married, you have a kid, you have responsibilities. I was helping you avoid dealing with those responsibilities instead of encouraging you to face them. But you said I deserved better. You said Elias was controlling. Maybe he was. Maybe you do deserve better. But I'm not better, Celestina. I'm a single guy who likes having fun without commitment. I was never going to be the answer to your marriage problems. So you just used me for entertainment?" "We used each other," Mars said honestly. "You used me to avoid dealing with your marriage, and I used you for companionship without responsibility. It wasn't healthy for either of us." I left his apartment feeling emptier than I'd ever felt in my life. The man I'd risked everything for had just confirmed that our entire relationship had been a lie. When I got home, Leela was in the living room with Elias, working on a puzzle. They both looked up when I walked in, and I saw something in my daughter's eyes that broke my heart. Uncertainty about whether I was going to stay or leave again. "Mummy, are you okay?" she asked in a small voice. I knelt down beside her and pulled her into a hug. "I'm okay, baby, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're okay too." Over her head, I met Elias's eyes. He didn't look angry anymore, just tired and sad. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Yes," he agreed, "we do." 3 months later, I signed the final divorce papers. Elias had been fair in the settlement, giving me joint custody once I completed counseling and demonstrated stability. I'd lost the house, half our assets, and most of our mutual friends, but I'd gained something I hadn't expected: clarity about who I really was and what I'd done. The counseling had been brutal but necessary. I'd had to face the reality that I'd been having an emotional affair, that I'd prioritized my own desires over my family's needs, and that I'd manipulated situations to avoid taking responsibility for my choices. Mars had moved to another city shortly after our last conversation. I heard through mutual friends that he'd gotten engaged to someone he'd been casually dating. It stung, but it also confirmed what I'd finally accepted. He'd never been the answer to my problems. I was sitting in my new apartment, a small 2-bedroom place where Lila stayed with me every other weekend, when I got a call from Jenna. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Better," I said, and I meant it. "It's hard, but I'm learning to take responsibility for my choices instead of blaming everyone else for the consequences." "I'm proud of you for doing the work," Jenna said, "and I want you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when I disagreed with what you were doing." "I know. I'm sorry I put everyone in such an impossible position." "We all make mistakes, Celestina. The important thing is learning from them." After we hung up, I looked around my small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was honest. No more lies, no more justifications, no more blaming others for my choices. I'd lost my marriage, my home, and my best friend, but I'd gained something more valuable: the ability to look at myself clearly and take responsibility for my life. It had taken losing everything to realize that the problem was never Elias's jealousy, or Mars's mixed signals, or my mother's enabling. The problem had always been me.